Hi, I'm Natasha Drabe of IconicHouses.org, and you're listening to US Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to US Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. Nowhere in the world celebrates modernism better than Modernism Week in Palm Springs, California. Every February, this 11-day architecture and design festival hosts exciting architecture documentary premieres, eye-popping house parties, modernist house tours, insightful lectures, designer shopping, detailed exhibitions, and much more. And for almost 10 years, U.S. Modernist Radio has been your gateway, reporting from the U.S. Modernist Compound, aka poolside at the hip Hotel Skylark, interviewing guests from architecture and design, plus special guests right here in the studio. I'm Tom Guild. If you're into mid-century modernism, Modernism Week in Palm Springs is the epicenter of the architecture we love. Want to go with U.S. Modernist in February 2025 and stay at the U.S. Modernist Compound? Email George at usmodernist.org. In this, our next to last show from Modernism Week 2024, George talks with San Francisco concrete designer and architect Fu Tung Cheng. And later, a panel on composer and arranger Jimmy Van Huesen. Jimmy may not be a household name like Frank Sinatra, but with Sinatra as his muse, Van Huesen carried the great American songbook to new heights in the 1950s and 60s. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by June Goldfinger and Jeff Taylor, sponsors of Circle Square Triangle, a traveling exhibition on the architecture of Myron Goldfinger, and by Diane Bald and the Bubman family, restoring significant architecture in Palm Springs, Toronto, Los Angeles, and Malibu. And now, your host, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Thanks, Tom. Fu Tung Cheng graduated from Berkeley.
Go Golden Bears!
A renowned designer and author celebrated for his signature use of concrete, Cheng founded Concrete Exchange, the sole training academy dedicated to concrete design. Cheng is a true concrete connoisseur with unparalleled passion and expertise for this versatile material that has shaped the built environment for centuries. His love affair with concrete began early in his career when he recognized both its structural integrity and creative potential. His contributions to the field are vast. Cheng has mastered the art of transforming concrete from a building material into a warm, expressive design element that blends seamlessly with other materials. He's also created some amazing modernist houses and has been featured in Architectural Records' annual housing issue. Here's my poolside conversation from Palm Springs with Fu Tung Cheng. So Fu Tung, let's start with your growing up, which was in a modernist house.
Yeah, and coming onto this radio show, it made me realize that as I looked around in my background, I forgot that my father had a house built in the valley, San Fernando Valley. We tore down an old farmhouse that we lived in for maybe 10 years out in the valley, and we were the only Chinese family out there at that time. So
what year was this?
Very unusual. We moved out there in 1951 from downtown LA.
Okay.
Yeah, and then in 1962, he hired Gilbert Liang, who turns out to be one of the Asian American first modernist architects. I didn't realize that he had that ilk at that time, and subsequently an architect named Bill Lee. And we have a home that is very much an iconic mid-60s house with, arches and a large vaulted living room space. But it was not a huge house. It's only 2,200 square feet or so.
Okay.
Yeah. But because my brother was an architect and we were very critical about certain types of architecture, we didn't appreciate really what we had right in front of us, actually,
Because when you're a kid, it's just your house you grow up in.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And also, unfortunately, my father made some bad choices about picking a contractor, and he went
for a common mistake.
Very common. He didn't realize that you're buying a promise, you're not buying an object. And so, he went for the low bidder, and that caused us a lot of trouble.
A lot of problems.
Over the years, especially with a flat roof.
Mm-hmm.
It used to rain in L.A., so it leaked a lot.
That's great. It used to rain in L.A. It sure did, way back in the day.
Yes.
As you were growing up, did you have a inclination to architecture at all, or were you heading towards another career?
I was heading toward fine art, actually. I graduated in fine art at the UC Berkeley.
Okay.
And I went to UCLA, also, and transferred. But my brother, Fu Ding, who was 6 years senior to me, actually studied architecture at USC. And then he had a internship to go to Le Corbusier's office in France.
Oh, that's quite exceptional.
Yes.
He didn't take many Americans.
No, I don't think so.
No.
So he was ready to go, and then Corbusier unfortunately passed.
Oh, okay.
So my brother ended up hanging out with Joan Baez in Paris and her sister.
Not a bad fallback plan.
Mimi Farina.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, he just happened to run into it. In those days, you could hitchhike across the country and just walk into people's houses and things.
Yeah.
It was a very open, free, joyous time for a brief period.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, the old days.
Yeah, the old days. Before Charlie Manson.
Right. Because
Yeah.
everyone got scared
Exactly.
then, right?
Exactly. Yeah. After that.
What led you into doing design for architecture?
Well, as an artist, maybe I felt that in order to do artwork, it was a more solo experience. And I do believe you had to have an incredible amount of ego to become an artist, because you just have to cut through all the doubt and not much financial rewards, just add it. And so three of my brothers are artists, and I'm the youngest. And so the pathway there seemed a little congested.
Yes.
And, when I had a show at UCLA, we had a student show, and I remember my brother looking at it and going like, oh, yeah, that'll do, and I just felt kind of like sinking feeling. So I transferred to UC Berkeley. And once there, I was in the art department and doing etching, painting, photography, things like that. But I love to work with my hands, and I love to build. So in order to make money, I just started repairing fences and doing foundation work and doing a little plumbing and a little electrical, just learning all on the fly. Mm-hmm. And I especially enjoyed doing a little bit of concrete work. And I used to watch the finishers, finish, and I'd ask them, how do you do that? How long do you wait? What do you do? And gradually, as I got a few jobs, I used those little jobs as opportunities to exercise a little creative energy, bring a little something to the table. And so a cousin of mine had me do a kitchen, and so I started playing around, experimenting a little bit as I was working. And gradually, I just started to enjoy that process. And somebody saw my own kitchen, which I had poured a cast concrete countertop, molded out of this huge thing. It was 1,200 pounds. It took like 10 people to turn it over. But somebody saw it, and it got published in Northern California Home and Gardens. Yeah.
And what year was this about?
This was by that time, it was 85 or 6.
So had nobody done a concrete countertop before for a kitchen?
Well, yeah, people did in the 20s.
Okay.
In fact, Green and Green,
Sure.
they did some concrete countertops, but they used asbestos as a binding agent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wah,
And-
wah, wah.
And subsequently, it fell out of favor as a finished material, like
Okay.
a furniture or a piece of a countertop or things like that. So I ended up writing a book on it because I kept making them. After I made it for my house, I wrote a book called Concrete Countertops, Forms and Finishes for the New Kitchen and Bath.
And it was a big seller.
Yeah, the publisher, Taunton Press, they do a lot of woodworking and things like that. They said, it's going to sell 5,000 copies, 15 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And it sold 250,000 copies.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of considered the best seller of that generation of books for them. And it surprised everybody. But I put a little philosophy in it. I put a little bit of Lao Tzu and, about the form of formlessness and things like that. I made it a how-to book. So it wasn't just a book of good-looking pictures. It was
Right.
How do you make these things, and how do you sculpt concrete so that it becomes a finish material, not just a engineering material.
A structural kind of thing.
Right. And so by pouring into slick plastic laminate, like Formica, pouring them into the molds, so then they would be absolutely smooth. They would reflect just like a glass-like finish.
Oh, wait a second. So in the mold for the concrete,
Yes.
you would put Formica in
Yes.
first?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's, wow. Now I can see it.
Yeah. So I got the slickest Formica, very hard, dense plastic. You could pour on glass, too. But, of course, it's a little more frail to work with glass, a little more dangerous, especially since you have to break the mold usually to release it. Well, then I started sculpting those and making those countertops into, I guess you'd call them practical landscapes, with drain boards, and I would put little pieces of brass in there to act as a trivet for the hot pots and things, and generally treat it as a design exercise. And took the idea of a laboratory sink, but made it out of concrete. So people started noticing that, and I started to get more work, and then I started to apply that to little small hardscape projects. And as I got some local notoriety to do design work, I started, as a contractor, beginning to do design build. So people would come to me and I would then design.
So now you're doing whole houses.
Well, I wasn't doing whole houses, no. I was just really small, remodeling bathrooms.
Okay.
Kitchens and bathrooms. So I started in kitchens and bathrooms and didn't do any houses, until somebody saw a photograph of my kitchen and said, "Do you design houses?" And I said, "Sure."
Yes, please.
And that was my first house, and it was in Sebastopol, in California. And, there I applied a lot of what I had been doing in little pieces here and there on small projects into a larger context. And then I was able to design the whole space, and I just enjoyed it so much. I enjoyed the scale. I enjoyed working with all the contractors to try to find potentialities for new ways of doing things from the contractors, from their experience. So if I could learn something about how to do exposed aggregate, I would find out, well, how do you do that? How do you do that without all the stuff coming out? And what's the timing involved? And why is it at my house with a cheap contractor, all the stones kind of just like faded off and sloughed off? And, there's just all these cups in the concrete.
Yeah.
And why is this one just holding? And, I was curious all the time on my job sites.
Now, your second book was called Concrete at Home.
Yes.
And that really took off.
That one didn't sell as much as the one, Concrete Countertops How-To, because I started showing the larger scale of things. And so the average guy in the garage who wanted to make a countertop, there weren't as big an audience. That one sold about 90,000 copies.
Still good.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad.
And was this about the time that Dwell discovered you?
Yeah.
And that must have been great.
Yes. In fact, my kitchen countertop was the first thing that they did. They covered my little kitchen, the one I described, in countertops. And so I met Laura Dean and then subsequently Michaela. And then we would see each other at kitchen and bath shows, things like that. Because I wasn't doing that many houses. I had one or two houses under my belt. Since I'm not an architect, it was very difficult to get a job as an architect because I'm not an architect. So people's confidence is usually, if they're going to hire an architect, they want somebody who's trained as an architect. And I was just self-taught. About year 2006-07, I mean, this is no big deal. Some people mistake me, think I'm talking about the NBA. It's not the NBA. I'm in the Hall of Fame of the NKBA, which is National Kitchen and Bath Association, not the National Basketball.
The NKBA, got it?
Yeah, so I got nominated and inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I thought, I don't want to be doing kitchens all my life, So I had done 3 houses by that time, and I started to focus more on doing houses. Yeah, and trying to get houses so that I could have more expression, more control over the whole environment, and challenge myself.
This is one of those times where I wish we were not just a podcast, because I have in my hand this beautiful brochure.
Thank you.
Of the houses that you put together.
Yes.
I assume that people can see some of these on your website, right?
Yes.
Which is chengdesign.com.
Correct. CHENG.
CHENGDESIGN.com.
Yes.
really, you can tell that there's a thoughtfulness about how these houses are put together.
Yeah, considerable thought. I mean, the gestation period of a Cheng home up to now, I'm not saying in the future we can't be more efficient, is about 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, because we put an incredible amount of detail in our work. And I like to pay attention to all elements of scale, from the smallest, like the tile, to the entire house and the structure of the house. Just finding that that's what I find reflects a timeless quality of aesthetic. When you go to Europe and go to Asia, it's the craftsmanship combined with the structure and the infusion of the culture into the fabric and the structure of the house or the dwelling or whatever it may be. To me, that's what resonates with us emotionally.
Sure.
And sometimes, I mean, I love modernists, of course. The idea of stripping things down to the essence and then finding out how that reflects on us emotionally. I mean, most of things are too noisy these days anyway, and in a modernist context, it can be very tranquil and peaceful to have that clutter just gone, I feel modernism is like the best, most strict modernists are like looking at a beautiful winter scene where you see the branches and you see, just against the snow, and things are brought to the essence and we can appreciate it. And sometimes, I mean, not everybody can live that way.
Right.
Right. And some people like more color, like another season, spring, summer, fall. And I think what's informing my work is I've been trying to do is find a balance so that it's a 4 seasons kind of experience. And that might be reflected in just how the landscape interacts with it. That's a way of bringing in color and things like that. Or it may be with some of the detailing that we bring into our projects. And they can be very modernist details. If you look at much in the tradition of Frey and people like that, they're looking at good design, basically. And they don't care the scale.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But they know how to use restraint.
Are there any things that prospective clients bring with them that you have to untrain them about? Like, did they see something on HGTV that's just kind of ridiculous? You have to say, no, that's just TV. That's not real life. We do not want to do that in your house.
That's such a good question and observation. Yes, of course, especially for a house that they've realized is going to be, one of the big projects of their lives. I always tell them it's such a privilege you have. It's a privilege that you shouldn't take for granted, that very few people can actually have a house built for themselves. But I tell people that they owe it to themselves to build something that is not just a myopic view of what they feel is representative of that moment for them, but they should do something that they know is going to be on the planet for a long time, and it should have something that other generations will appreciate as well and preserve.
Because most houses will outlive their owners.
Oh, yes.
The vast majority of them.
Yes, a vast majority of them, yeah. And you can see here, I was just taking a tour here, an architectural tour, and you can see the houses that withstand the test of time and those that don't, and what is that quality that withstands the test of time, regardless of style.
Did modernism exist in Asian culture before the early 20th century? Like, was Lao Tzu talking about anything that relates to modernism today?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In Lao Tzu's times, that was 200 years before the millennia in BC. He was around 200 to 300 BC.
Okay.
His whole concept, it's surprisingly how modern his thinking is about the pressures and what we bring to chaos to what is really a tranquil part of what we should be. Our spiritual nature is simple and elegant. And that is reflected in Chinese philosophy. Now, what happened was very interesting because of especially people interested in the history of the aesthetics of how, like right now, if you think of the roots of modernism, people go to Japan and they think, yes, here, the Japanese aesthetic, the clean tatami room, the the beautiful spaces, simplistic without much furnishing, and that whole wabi-sabi aesthetic is actually an evolution, just a slight evolution, but very, very significant one from the Tang Dynasty in China, where they lived on mats, and they had the tatami mat. Mm-hmm. And all the Southern Song Chinese paintings are all those landscapes that you associate with Zen.
Okay.
Yeah. And Zen is the Japanese word for Chan in Chinese. And Chan Buddhism, was predated the Zen in Japan by 400 years. So at that time in China, that aesthetic, that idea of the living close to nature and understanding the complexity and simplicity of a natural existence came into play then. So for me, that's what I try to tap into. I practice Tai Chi, I practice meditation, tapping into that idea and bringing that, hopefully, if I can, bringing that sensibility into a space is my goal.
Yeah. Well, I can see from these houses that you've really achieved that.
A work in progress.
A work in progress.
Constantly. And I'm trying to stay ahead of my age.
Yes, as we all are.
So I can continue the work. I enjoy it so much. My wife always says, let's go take a vacation. And I want to take a vacation designing a new house.
Right. Well, I certainly understand that. Now, are all your houses in California, or are they spread around?
As you know, I've done some remodeling. That was when I did the Robin House in
Durham, North Carolina.
Durham, North Carolina. At that time, mostly what I had done up to that point was one or two houses and a lot of kitchens. Mm-hmm. And I did their kitchen, and then they liked that, and they wanted me to expand it into the living room and space and things. So subsequently, I thought of, well, if I can go into this bigger, more expanded viewpoint and do houses, I'll try to do them anywhere I can. And I got a job in Puerto Rico, so I did a house on the island of Culebra.
Okay.
But mostly they're in California, in the Bay Area.
Okay.
Most of the houses I've done are in the Bay Area in California, yeah.
Fu Tung, thank you so much for visiting with us and hanging out with us and talking about your work. Again, you can see all his houses and learn about his mastery with concrete at chengdesign.com. That's CHENGDESIGN. Thank you so much.
George, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
That was George talking with Fu Tung Cheng. Jimmy Van Huesen is the musical genius behind timeless melodies from the Great American Songbook, including a collaboration with Frank Sinatra, resulting in huge hits like Come Fly With Me and Swinging on a Star. He also loved Palm Springs, which he discovered while stopping for gasoline on his way to Hollywood to write songs for Bing Crosby. Speaking poolside from the Hotel Skylark, George spends time with Jim Burns, director of the documentary film Jimmy Van Huesen, Swingin' in the Desert with Frank and Bing. Jimmy's grandnephew, Brooke Babcock, president of the Van Huesen Music Corporation in Nashville, which administers rights to Van Huesen songs, and cabaret singer Marisa Mulder. We joined them poolside at the Hotel Skylark.
We had a little technical trouble with this interview. I'd like to say that the microphone failed, or that we'd had a little too much frim-fram sauce with our chifalfa, or that Delta lost the equipment on the way back from Palm Springs. Alas, one of our staff, who shall remain nameless, although his name begins with G, forgot to press the record button, and the first few minutes were lost. But with great grace and forgiveness, my three guests have reassembled, like the Avengers, to re-record that first part over Zoom. So when you hear the background tone shift shortly, we're back in Palm Springs. Thank you so much, Jim, Marisa, and Brooke, for getting the team back together.
Yeah, thank you for having us, George.
Well, let's start with a basic question. Jimmy Van Huesen wasn't his real name. Does it have anything to do with the shirt company?
George, Brooke Babcock speaking here. George, it actually does. My family's last name is Babcock, and Jimmy was, when he was young, around age 15, 16, he was a DJ at a local radio station there in Syracuse, New York, WSYR. And the manager did not like his last name, Babcock, if you catch the connotation. So
Sure.
Anyways, he was having also problems with his parents trying to keep him in school. So he had a friend, a little local neighborhood friend, Phil Harris. And Jimmy, at that point, actually Edward Chester Babcock, was saying to his friend Phil, hey, I really need to figure out how I can change my name. My parents are upset. The radio manager's upset. What are your thoughts? There's variations on this story. One is they were walking down the street in Syracuse. Another one, they were looking out of a hotel. Long story short, they saw a billboard that had Van Huesen collars. So Phil basically said, hey, what do you think about Van Huesen? And the rest is history. They went with Jimmy, and we have Jimmy Van Huesen. And from age 16 onwards, he was Jimmy Van Huesen.
That's pretty cool. Did the shirt company ever send him some shirts?
No, to my knowledge.
Okay.
Great question. No, great question.
Now, there's an exciting development in Syracuse coming up next year. What's that all about?
Yeah, George, we are in the middle of developing a film in concert program with Jimmy Van Huesen music and archive film clips of Frank Sinatra and others singing Jimmy Van Huesen songs in films. And the way this goes is that the Pop Symphony Orchestra plays the music to the track of these singing clips where, through modern technology, we've been able to actually scrub out, as they call it, the music off these old tracks. With a current film, it's easy. You just tell the studio, send me a film without music. But this amazing AI-assisted technology, we assume, is able to actually take the music out of these old clips from 1957, for example, of Frank Sinatra singing All the Way from the film The Joker is Wild. And then this dramatic effect is a live Pop Symphony Orchestra playing an arrangement of the music to these amazing old film clips. And its premiere will be with the Syracuse Orchestra in Syracuse, which was, in a nice way, Jimmy's hometown. Turns out to be Brooke Babcock's, mine, and Marisa's hometown, too. So it's going to be a great event.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're hoping to have this picked up by other symphonies around the country.
I would think that would be a really entertaining evening to be able to see that and experience that with an orchestra behind a vocalist.
Absolutely, yeah. Along the way, we're going to have the story of Van Huesen told. Of course, his remarkable career with the 4 Academy Awards, the Emmy Award, membership in the Grammy Hall of Fame for his all-time classic, Swingin' on a Star. So it's going to be a great evening with these clips and the Van Huesen story.
Van Huesen had a string of hits in New York, and Hollywood was looking to woo him. He was hired by Paramount to write for Bing Crosby films, especially the road films, which were very popular. What were those road films about?
The road films were Bob Hope and Bing Crosby getting together for these comedies with music. You couldn't call them musicals, really, but there was quite a bit of music in them. And Paramount wooed Jimmy Van Huesen away from New York City, where he was loving his life there. He was quite a denizen of the night, enjoyed everything about New York City, having a good time. But Hollywood saw the success he was having and said, we're embarking on these road pictures with the biggest stars in motion pictures and music at the time. And we want you to come and write with lyricist Johnny Burke for these road pictures. They didn't write the first one. Van Huesen wasn't there in time for that. It was the road to Singapore. But he did start off with the road to Zanzibar. The second one, road to Morocco. I may be getting the order wrong, but there was a total of 6, road to Rio, 7, I'm sorry. And some wonderful all-time classic Van Huesen songs came from those films.
It was sort of a buddy picture, early incarnation of that kind of thing, where it was the two guys that played off each other, and they were always getting into trouble with women and not having enough money and, all that kind of thing on the road. And meeting up with Dorothy Lamour, of course, along the way. And then
As you do when you're in an exotic place.
Perfect, yes, always with Dorothy.
Are the 3 of you now kind of doing a road thing together?
Well, right today we are.
Today.
Yeah.
Is this act going to travel to other places?
In different forms, I guess. You know, Marisa does a Van Huesen show on her own. It has done for a number of years among her other shows, her other theme shows that she does. So she performs around. And then Brooke and I try to get out to do some exhibition showing of our documentary and do talks after that and that sort of thing.
On your show, Marisa, what performers do you talk about a lot? What are some of the female performers that have done Jimmy Van Huesen songs over the years?
Ella Fitzgerald, Margaret Whiting, Dinah Shore. And of course, you know, more recently you've got Lady Gaga. Who's that wonderful jazz singer? Samara Joy.
Yes.
It's amazing to see all these young artists of my generation are still covering this great music. So a wide range of females, past and present.
Diana Krall does quite a bit of Van Huesen.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
It actually does a wonderful version of Only the Lonely, which is not really done very much. Yeah, so she gets into sort of the lesser-known gems of Jimmy Van Huesen, which is a wonderful thing to do because a lot of people know, Here's That Rainy Day and Darn That Dream, they're wonderful, but then there's some other really, really great things that they'll discover that are terrific.
How did Jimmy Van Huesen get started in music?
He started at a very young age. He was probably 6 or 7. His parents were actually performers, like in choir. They went to church a lot, heavy on the Methodist side. But he started playing. He was self-taught on the piano. Not a lot of people know that. But one thing that kind of strikes me is he said that he had written most of the songs by age 15. So he had in his head all these songs that he needed to get out later in life.
So he just stored them up and
just kept writing.
Dispensed them every few months, right?
Imagination's a good example of that he purportedly wrote it when he was 12 or 13 for a girl in junior high school back then. He had the melody, and I guess he wrote the lyrics, but then 20 years later, Johnny Burke provided the lyrics, and it was one of his biggest hits in the late 30s, and another jazz standard, Imagination.
He was a very smart guy at a young age and very industrious, but he figured when he was in high school, he wanted to get the girl. All the guys were football players. There was a lot of competition on that side. But over here, very few were on the music side. He figured out that's how I can get the girl.
And how'd that go for him?
Excellent.
Almost a little too good sometimes.
I assume there was more than one.
Oh, yes.
Oh, sure.
He was a bachelor up until he was like 56. So
okay.
He played the fill throughout the years.
And when did he settle down?
56.
Yeah, he was age 56. He met a woman, and her name was Bobby Brock. She was a widower, and they actually lived out in Yucca Valley, not too far from here. Put a nice big estate up on the hill or on the mountain. But yeah, he slowed down at age 56.
Did he also perform as well as write?
Not really.
Not too much?
He was strictly about writing the music. He was actually we would say it camera shy, did not like performing in public, but he loved writing music.
Flying airplanes and hanging out with Sinatra. He was happy with just that.
Yes.
And drinking a little alcohol.
I assume he spent a lot of time in the famous Twin Palms house here.
Sure.
That has the palm trees out front and the piano-shaped pool and that Sinatra owned for a while, and the other Sinatra compounds.
The Rancho Mirage House, particularly. Thunderbird Heights? No, that's not Thunderbird. The Rancho Mirage House. But yes, they spent a lot of time together, he and Sinatra.
So in doing the presentation you're going to be doing today for Modernism Week, what do you want the public to know the most about Jimmy Van Huesen?
Well, what we're going to do is show some rare photos, a number taken by Jimmy Van Huesen. He was quite an avid photographer, and we have some great photos that he took of his time here in Palm Springs that we didn't have time to have in the documentary. One group, these aren't actually ones that he took, but we have some great photos of a piano bar that he opened and only had open for 1 year, I believe, at the old Desert Inn.
Okay.
And it was Jimmy Van Huesen's, what was it, cocktail or piano bar?
It was called the Jimmy Van Huesen Piano Bar.
Okay, piano bar. And so we have some terrific photos there of Lauren Bacall, Humphrey Bogart hanging with Jimmy and Frank, Dean Martin, Crosby, Joe Bushkin, Bobby Short played there apparently quite a bit. So some great shots there.
He's one of the vocalists that I really missed having seen before he passed away.
Yeah.
I really discovered him when he did the Charlie commercial way back for Charlie Perfume.
Yeah, I remember that, sure.
Oh, yeah.
That was terrific.
And Shelley Hack would float around New York and hop in and out of cabs, and there would be Bobby Shore at the end.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. He spent quite a bit of time here, and I believe, was a pretty good friend of Jimmy Van Huesen.
What does the public generally know about Jimmy Van Huesen at all? They just know the songs, typically?
They know, yeah. They don't know nearly enough, even still.
Yeah.
He's the more under-celebrated giant of the Great American Songbook. There's no doubt about that. And so about a decade ago, when we got the idea together for the documentary and I talked to Brooke, the first thing I said was, has there been a documentary about Jimmy Van Huesen? No. Well, we have to correct that for sure. And so one of the things that you find out in the Jimmy Van Huesen story is he was a musical genius. There's no doubt about that. And he loved to carouse and all that came with that, with Frank Sinatra, pretty much a very close friend for 50 years, both in New York, originally in the late 30s, and then Hollywood, and then in Palm Springs. But
did he hang out with Sinatra during the Vegas years
absolutely.
At the Sands?
Yes, absolutely. Jimmy was part of the original Rat Pack in Holmby Hills, even before Sammy and Dean and everybody got involved there. That was Lauren Bacall, Bogart, Judy Garland,
Shirley MacLaine,
who is in our documentary. So yeah, very much so. He was one of the originals as far as that went.
Now, how will people be able to see this documentary? Is it going to have theater distribution? Is it festivals? Is it streaming? What's going to happen?
It was aired on PBS from 2014 to 17.
Okay.
And so now today, here in Palm Springs, we're showing it as an exhibition as part of the Modernism Week cultural aspect.
Right.
Mid-century. It fits perfectly with mid-century, with most of his work being done 40s, 50s, and into the 60s.
So do I have to buy a PBS coffee cup or something to get something for my home? I mean, what's involved? How do I watch this now in 2024?
Well, at one of these exhibition screenings, and perhaps we'll be back again. Actually, we originally screened this in 2019 here as part of Modernism Week, and it was to a sellout audience. And so now, 5 years later, we're coming back and doing it again. So maybe we'll be back here.
You hear, I'm trying to expand your audience here beyond once every 5 year showings. I mean,
Right.
is there a DVD people can get? Is there anything that...
Unfortunately, the music rights with 60 different pieces of music in here that are fairly up there with their licensing, that was not possible.
Okay.
But it did run. We had a pretty good run of it on PBS for those 3 years, and so I think a lot of people did catch it then. I'm sorry that you didn't.
Yeah,
but,
I am too. I was ready to go buy a copy.
Okay, well, you have to get over to the Edinburgh today and take a look.
What books are there about Jimmy Van Huesen?
There's actually a biography that was written by an author, Chris Coppola, and he did that approximately 10 years ago. And that is for public distribution. Mm-hmm. Go at Amazon.com. You can get it print on demand, or you can get it on the digital version.
Okay. And what would you learn in that book about Jimmy?
His entire life, start to finish. Very well done. And actually, it was originally written in his personal penmanship, but it never got finished.
Yeah.
And so it's basically a 3/4 of his life and his own penmanship, and we transferred that into the book.
Okay. So you run the estate, essentially, for him?
That is correct.
Okay. So how come you can't license like this guy for the songs to put it on the DVD, or how does it work?
When we originally did the license, it was through PBS.
Yeah.
Because of the way that they distribute it, we were able to get a lot lower pricing or fees on the licensing.
Yeah.
But one part of that, at the point, was in the contract. It was not up for being put on like Amazon.com or onto Netflix. So it was more of a legal issue, if anything.
I see.
Now, if you know somebody with Netflix now,
okay, I don't, but
have them give us a call.
But
it's a wonderful documentary. I mean, it really shows the talent of Jimmy Van Huesen and the scope, because it is so odd that more people don't know about him. Like, you think of George Gershwin or Cole Porter, but people don't recognize the name Jimmy Van Huesen like they do the others. Yet he did write more songs recorded than Sinatra than any other songwriter, which is amazing. So the documentary really is special. I hope it finds a way to be accessed by more people.
What's one of your favorite songs to sing of his?
One of my favorite songs, I think, is But Beautiful. It's so gorgeous. He wrote that with Johnny Burke. There's so many I love. Polka Dots and Moonbeams, All the Way. Sunday, Monday, or Always is a gorgeous ballad. I think I do about 22 songs in the show.
Okay.
And I could go for hours more. I mean, there's so much music. It was hard to even narrow it down to 22.
Now, when you screen the documentary, are you going to sing too?
I'm going to sing afterwards.
Afterwards, okay.
At 7:30. So after the documentary is screened and the talk back, then I'll come on and do my thing.
All right. And who's backing you up?
My pianist, John Weber from New York City, a wonderful jazz pianist, and 3 local musicians.
Oh, awesome.
We have guitar, bass, and drums.
Oh, that'll be great. I'm sorry I can't make it. I wish I could.
That's okay.
Thank you all for coming and chatting with me about Jimmy Van Huesen. I hope you all in our listening audience will be Googling him now and getting more information about this and pulling up songs by him. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
That was George with Jim Burns, Brooke Babcock, and Marisa Mulder.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by June Goldfinger and Jeff Taylor, sponsors of Circle, Square, Triangle, a traveling exhibition on the architecture of modern Goldfinger, and by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Palm Springs, Toronto, Los Angeles, and Malibu. Want to go with us to Modernism Week in February 2025? Email me at george@usmodernist.org. Okay, Tom, it's all yours.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 20,500 significant modernist houses, and access 4.3 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song is performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with Kelly Policelli on guest research. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guile. George and I will be back next year with more Admiring the Women, Admiring the Men, Admiring the Other Men in Palm Springs editions of U.S. Modernist Radio.